This was such an important chapter of My Hero Academia that would begin with our young heroes in the dormitory on the night before departure. With it being decided that Shoto would be the one to face his villainous older brother DABI, Deku had his concerns and very much felt bad for his friend. However, Shoto would express that there was no need to worry about him, as this was something he was prepared for and was ultimately his choice. At the same time, Ida, as per usual, was making sure his classmates remained on task. And here he was ensuring that they would be ready in 30 minutes time. Shoto knew very well that Endeavor would be bothered by the fact that he wouldn't be able to live up to his obligations as the father of the villain, but the way Shoto saw it, such a thing was a fitting punishment for him. He furthermore believed the decision making of Hawks and company to be rather wise, and I'd have to agree. As has been established previously, Endeavor is the only hero available to them that can stand any chance against All for One in this conflict. If they don't pin that guy down, forget his quirks. The biggest issue for them would be All for One's mind as he begins to break down, evaluate, and ultimately find flaws in their operations. The heroes do in fact have a pretty sound plan, however, it is very clearly already deviated quite a bit from what was originally intended. And if you intend to see more My Hero Academia content from us, be sure to subscribe to Plot Armor with notifications on. DABI was a byproduct of his father's sins. Shoto saw this as his responsibility, and if he ever wanted to become a hero, then this was the one thing he couldn't possibly ever run from, and I completely agree. From there, we would have the explanation of Shoto's new move. This was the power he had cultivated for the sake of bridging the gap between his brother and himself, allowing him to overcome these insurmountable odds. This power being something that Shoto had alluded to a few chapters back when everyone was training for the big battle. And as Deku would point out, this new move of his looked pretty similar to Endeavor's signature Flash Fire Fist, but with a twist. And this is how you really know the old Deku is back, as he is really excited to talk about quirks. Ojiro from over the shoulder would mention how Deku missed the associated process of cultivating the power during the time he was rogue. As Kaminari would comically point out that Shoto's flames in this state actually aren't hot at all, as he could just touch them without issue. Also, while in this state, Shoto's hair stands on end, which is pretty cool. Shoto would then let it be known just how hard training and maintaining it has been. Which is why even after all that time, he was still getting the hang of it. And man, these kids have been certainly cultivated by strenuous circumstances, because in just around a year's time, Shoto seems to have realized the shining potential his father attempted to force out of him for the entirety of his life, and then some. But to all this, Bakugo would then shout out that he is still the strongest. But listen, by the end of this chapter, I highly doubt that is the case. Oh, and again, Ito is being a good class president. Shoto would then elaborate that by using his ice and fire halves in tandem with his heart as the central focus, he could manifest his power. The circulation of which throughout his entire body resulted in a state of thermal equilibrium. Shoto had effectively created a cold fire, and truly, with this sort of power at such a young age, Shoto is bound to be ridiculously powerful as a pro hero. Endeavor's intention was to have ice merely act as a coolant for the sake of greater firepower. Yet Shoto here, having primarily used his ice for so long, has been able to bring it up to a degree of capability that was on par with the fire aspect of his quirk. Using the two in conjunction as opposed to leaning heavily into one side, Shoto has accepted his flames as his own, and furthermore deviated from the expectations of his father, and undergone an even greater path of progression. Shoto recognized that only he could find validation in his own existence, a concept that had first been brought to the forefront of his mind by Deku, and so even now, he was immensely grateful and would thank the kid. Which would then bring us to the use of said power against his eldest brother. This was Freezing Impact, Burning Ice Blade. He'd strike the villain directly, urging him to cool down for once. The attack would see DABI hurtle backwards from the sheer power of it, yet regained his footing by way of his own flames being used as a propellant. And this is a whole lot of fire, mind you. The inhuman appearance of DABI was the only chilling aspect of him, as he'd recognized that Shoto's body was able to hold out against his flash fire. Not to mention, Shoto also had ice capable of suppressing his flames. He had to admit it, Shoto was perfectly suited to fight him. DABI would then do a quick backflip while bringing attention to the morality of his little brother, stating that despite being connected by blood ties, they were nothing alike. And as he forced his hand onto the ground, managed to neutralize Shoto's power. Yet all Shoto really needed was a solid opening. DABI, whose visage now really emphasized the fact that his body had been tinkered by the doctor like a Nomu, would melt the ground to let it be known that this was all the byproduct of their superhuman society. That they were the utmost limit, the pot that boiled over. That once you deviate from the path of righteousness, there is no return. But DABI was done talking. He was about that action as he made this location look like an active volcano. He had effectively sentenced Shoto to death, but again, Shoto was not alone in this fight as Endeavor's sidekicks would come to his aid, taking the attack in his stead. Shoto would then thank them for saving him, as that attack would have definitely done him in. But Burnin would dismiss his appreciation as wasted energy again, but this would only prompt Shoto to thank them even more profusely. A minor inclusion that just goes to show how different Shoto is from his father. I mean, these heroes, having been sidekicks of Endeavor's for years, aren't the sort that need any amount of praise. I mean, they certainly would not get it from Endeavor. They're the kinds of heroes that are satisfied by being able to deliver results and make a difference. Sure, Endeavor was egotistical and pretty sick in the head, but he did save a lot of people, and by being with him, even if they didn't support his ideals and the things he did behind closed doors, they were able to save an innumerable amount of people. And to be completely honest, in our own world, even despite not being involved, just by being associated with him, they'd probably get cancelled. But despite not being powerhouses themselves, these are true heroes. And I think that for the most part, aside from those who are atoning, that can be said for everyone that is involved in this conflict against the villains. If you're still fighting the good fight in this trash heap of a society, then you're probably a good guy. From there, Shoto would reflect on his life. His blood and his past made his existence especially lonely, with pretty much nothing to look forward to. But when Deku opened his eyes, it suddenly seemed like all his peers were so far ahead of him. But in actuality, this was not the case at all. They were all standing with him. Class 1A was always there for Shoto. They gave him a place where he could feel safe. Shoto may have been born into a horrible household, but home is where the heart is. And Shoto's heart was with Class 1A. It's not the family you're born with, it is the family you choose. And as he built up all the power he could muster, Shoto recalled the words of Mount Lady a few months prior. Speaking of the importance of a super move, that this is a triumphant declaration as to the sort of hero that you are. If Shoto were to simply just take Endeavor's super move and just take it to that next level, then he wouldn't be much more than a carbon copy of Endeavor, which really and truly is what he was raised to be. But he is so much more than that, and his super move should be able to encapsulate that. Shoto in an instant would just move forward and meet his brother at point blank range. And although I may find it hard to believe in the case of DABI, as he has gone to crazy extremes, he believed that you could turn back, even if it was by force. And so he would ask his brother to please stop, as Shoto would let off one of the most insane attacks we have ever seen in the series. This was Giant Arctic Tsunami, a sprawling spew of chilled flames reminiscent of a watery natural disaster that would strike DABI directly. We would get a shot of the two brothers as children as the fallout of Shoto's attack could be seen to be massive, freezing over several skyscrapers in the distance. I mean, this makes DABI's melting of the ground and the All Might statue look like child's play. And even more than that, even grander than that, Shoto has finally won. DABI has been defeated. And I'm unsure of this, but it appears as though DABI may have lost his legs after taking this attack, which is absolutely insane. Now, with the end of the series inching closer and closer, it is pretty reasonable to conclude that this is the end of Shoto's development, this chapter being the effective closing of his personal journey and story. I, for one, am very satisfied with him as a character, and have gradually come to appreciate him more and more as time has gone on, which I have definitely spoken about as time has gone on. And at this point, I must admit that he may challenge Kirishima for the position of my favorite character in the series, but I'm not so sure yet. I just really hope that the anime does this fight justice when the time comes, because good lord, was this epic. And with the conclusion of this, I now know the position Ida is meant to play in this fight, or correction, in the aftermath of this fight. Seeing as Burn and the other sidekicks are spent, as well as Shoto of course, I'd imagine that Ida is just going to be transportation. He's going to be the fast one who is able to bring them to safety, bring them to potentially Recovery Girl, and get them patched up. Now, as many of you have come to understand over the course of us covering this series, I am not the biggest Ida fan in the world, but previously I have stated that I wanted him to actually have a part in this fight, to actually do something. But although he isn't fulfilling a Katara role in like a Zuko versus Azula fight, he is going to end up doing something in the aftermath. At least he is contributing, which if you remember, to Monoma, Vlad King did state is a major thing. Just contributing at all is a major thing. Everyone is a hero, everyone is the main character. Then yeah, Ida gets his participation trophy. And I don't know how much chapstick Recovery Girl may have, but potentially if a bunch of heroes are able to close out their fights and heal up, then perhaps the issue of them having inferior numbers could be surmounted. But we'll just have to wait and see. As always, I am Slice of Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.